These are 10 cards you should always draft in Final Fantasy. Now, always is a bit of a strong word, so let's just say you should highly prioritize these cards because they're fantastic and will help you win more games. First is Dragoon's Wyvern. For 2 and a blue, you get a 2/1 flyer that says, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token. This common is fantastic. It plays offense well by giving you a 2-powered flyer for 3 mana. It plays defense well by giving you 2 bodies that can split up and block different things. And it overall is just a card that every single blue deck is interested in, no matter the archetype. You're always happy to play this on turn 3. When your opponent plays it on turn 3, you kind of groan a little bit because it provides a little bit of extra value and it's really hard to deal with cleanly with just one card because of that token, and it's quite cheap at just 3 mana. Overall, this little guy is adorable and fantastic, so you should be taking it highly in your drafts. Next is Saz's Chocobo. For a green mana, you get a 0/1 that says whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This is a card every single green deck is interested in. It looks like it might just be for the red-green landfall or aggro archetype, but it's just a card that, because of the way the stats are lined up, if you just put this into a random green-black mid-range deck or a green-white tokens deck, really any green deck, you're ending up with, if you play this in your opening hand, a 1-mana 4/5 a lot of the time, which is just such a huge stat line for the mana that you're investing that any green deck is going to be happy playing this card and really wants to take it highly in the draft. So don't see landfall in this card and think that it's super narrow. It's really just a stellar green card no matter how you look at it. Next is Dragoon's Lance. For 1 and a white, you get an artifact equipment that says job select. So basically when it enters, you create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach Dragoon's Lance to it. The equipped creature gets +1/+0 and is a knight in addition to its other types. And during your turn, equipped creature has flying, and then you can equip it to other things for 4 mana. So for 2 mana, you get a 2/1 flyer, which is already quite good. And then it's kind of a must answer threat in the late game, or just provides you some inevitability, because turning any of your creatures into flying creatures is really, really tough to deal with for a lot of decks, unless they have a big flyer of their own or a bunch of reach, or like a reach creature that's sizable enough. They're going to have to use a removal spell on each creature that you put the Dragoon's Lance on. And if you play this on turn 2 and they don't have a kill spell or a way to deal with the creature, it can hit them for like 8 damage on its own before they're able to get their defenses up and running. So Dragoon's Lance, absolutely fantastic. And it's an equipment to fuel equipment synergies, an artifact to fuel artifact synergies, and overall just provides you with everything you're looking for and fits into any white deck and is just stellar. Next is Thunder Magic. This is just a amazing removal spell in red. It does the little removal roll, the middle-sized removal roll, and the big removal roll for a common, which is just absolutely incredible. So for a single red mana, you can get the Thunder mode, which does 2 damage to target creature. For 3 and a red, you can get the Thundara mode, which does 4 damage to target creature. And for 5 and 2 red, you can get the Thundaga mode, which does 8 damage to target creature. And having cast all of these modes multiple times, they all do come up and are relevant in the game, especially because oftentimes in the early turns, you're using the Thunder mode to deal with their early threat, get a little bit of a mana advantage, fuel up your draws, and then in the mid game, you're able to kill any of their mid-sized creatures, and in the late game, you can kill all of their big creatures. So it scales really nicely with the game, because by the time your opponent's playing bigger cards, you'll have more mana to deal with the threats that are at that size. So just a fantastic card. Every red deck wants this, and it's an absolute priority in the draft. Next is Cloud of Darkness. This is a multicolored card, so it's a little bit less flexible, but it's very splashable in something like a blue-green deck if you are in the need for extra removal and you have some fixing, which blue-green often has. So it's a little bit more flexible than maybe it looks, but basically you get a 5-mana 3/3 with flying that says when Cloud of Darkness enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Naturally, over the course of the game, your cards are going to trade off, but there's also in black-green quite a few cards that put cards into your graveyard directly from your library, so you mill some cards over, which makes fueling Cloud of Darkness very trivial in those decks and makes it just a stellar value engine. A 5-mana 3/3 that basically kills whatever you care about is just an absolute is a really strong card, as you've been hearing me say with all of these cards on this list, because these are all cards you should be really prioritizing in the draft because they are fantastic. Just keep in mind this is legendary, so if you get multiple of them, just don't play both of them at once unless you just need the removal spell mode. Next is Choco Comet. This card ends games. So in the early stages, you're going to be able to kill something small and get a bird, which is pretty reasonable, like a 4-mana 2/2 bird that then did 2 damage to something is really nice. But in the late game, it absolutely just ends the game because you have X red, and you can deal the damage directly to your opponent. So if you're in top deck mode and you have like 9 mana in play, you can just deal 7 to your opponent with your Choco Comet, which is a really nice card to have access to. There are some cards that in the set that care about casting big spells. Choco Comet's going to trigger those. And it overall is just a card that scales well with the game and provides a lot of upside. You can also, if you really need to, cast it for X equals 0 to just get a bird right on turn 2 if you really need to curve out. But oftentimes this card gets better as the game goes on because being able to deal X damage means that you can just deal your opponent a ton of life, kill one of their big creatures. Overall, it's a great card that you'll be happy putting into any red deck. Next is Summon Fenrir. This card is really devastating to see in the early turns of the game. If this gets slammed on turn 3, you immediately feel very far behind. It's a 2 and a green, 3/2 Saga Wolf, so it has 3 chapters. The first chapter, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, so it ramps you up, can even fix your mana, and just helps you accelerate into the middle stages of the game very quickly. It also has chapter 2, when you cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, so you can just get a giant threat into play ahead of schedule thanks to the ramp and putting an extra counter on that creature. And then the final mode, right as Summon Fenrir sacrifices itself, is to draw a card if you control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. Now, a lot of the power of this card comes from the fact that it is a Saga creature, so don't be afraid to trade this off in combat before it sacrifices itself, because that's one of the benefits of the card. You can play this on turn 3, your opponent attacks in with their creatures, you trade off with your Summon Fenrir. You don't need to trigger all 3 modes. Part of the value of this card is that it's able to trade with your opponent's creatures, and so that just gets you a nice little 2-for-1 locked up because you get the land, and then you get the 3/2 creature that you can do stuff with for those turns. And when it does die, you will trigger that Ecliptic Growl, usually by having the biggest creature, and be able to draw an extra card to replace itself. So just a absolute, I'm saying it a lot, this card's a priority, it's really strong, and it's a one that you'll be happy to take for any green deck. Next is Samurai's Katana. This card is a little bit more narrow, though it's still good in any red deck, but in red-white is really where it shines because that is an equipment deck, so it triggers all of your cards that care about equipments, fuels all of those synergies. It also fits really nicely into black-red because it's a non-creature spell that you're casting, so it'll trigger any of your wizard pingers, and overall it's really great, a just aggressive card. It basically comes into play as a 3-mana, 3/3 trample haste, and then you can equip it around for 5 mana. So in the late game, any of your smaller creatures will be able to gain +2/+2 and trample and haste if you have a bunch of mana. So if you get to 7 mana, you can play a 2-drop, give it +2/+2 trample haste, and just hit your opponent. So really a threatening card to have on the battlefield in the late game, and also just a card that on turn 3 can account for so much damage. Because if it gets in one hit and then your opponent like scrambles to get a blocker, you kill that blocker, you get another hit in. It just, because of the haste and the trample, means it's really hard to deal with, and the fact that you can then equip it to other things, it's a really nice card that especially shines in red-white. So if you have this card, try to lean towards that archetype, but it's just going to be a good card in any red deck you have, as long as you're leaning towards being a little bit aggressive, which red likes to do. Next is Overkill. So premium removal spell, very straightforward. 2 and a black, target creature gets -0, -9,999 until end of turn. So basically you just kill whatever you want. Sometimes there are sets where this sort of removal spell isn't a high priority just because you want to be prioritizing threats instead of answers, but this card is so good and efficient and easy to cast that any deck is going to be interested in this card, and it's going to be a high priority as a result. Finally, we have Shantoto Tactician Magician. It only fits into blue-red because it's a 3-drop that you really want to be able to play on curve, but it's so powerful in blue-red that it's still worth taking really highly, even if it's your first blue or red card. So Shantoto Tactician Magician is 1 blue-red for a 0/4. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Shantoto gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. If X is 4 or more, draw a card. So it basically just makes any of your mid-size spells, so 4 or more, is going to be a lot of the spells in your blue-red deck, because your blue-red deck is trying to do that, as is the archetype. Basically, Shantoto says whenever you cast one of those spells, it replaces itself, which is just going to draw you into more of those spells and turn Shantoto into a 4-powered attacker. So this card can hit for loads of damage and keep the cards flowing. So if your opponent doesn't kill this immediately, you basically are always able to win the game with the immense card advantage provided by Shantoto Tactician Magician. This is a card that you should snap up if you see it, and if you get it past a little bit late, try to move into blue-red to take full advantage. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, leave hashtag 10wins in the comment section down below, because these cards are winners and will help you win more games. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.